The cancellation came less than 40 minutes before the first guests were due to arrive at Clarence House. Staff phones lit up in silence. Cars were turned away before reaching the gates. And inside palace corridors, one question spread faster than the official explanation ever could. Why had Queen Camilla suddenly pulled the plug on one of the most carefully orchestrated receptions of the season? What began as a minor scheduling adjustment quickly exploded into whispers of humiliation, betrayal, and a guest list that had shifted in ways no one expected. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For weeks, the reception had reportedly been positioned as one of Queen Camilla's most important private gatherings of the year, carefully designed to reinforce her influence within royal literary circles, elite charity foundations, and the old aristocratic networks that had long supported her rise. Inside the monarchy, invitations were said to have been personally reviewed by senior aides close to Clarence House, with guest confirmations treated almost like political endorsements rather than ordinary social RSVPs. According to palace insiders, the reception was never simply about tea, conversation, or charitable appearances. It was about visibility, presence, loyalty, and in royal life, those things matter far more than the public is ever allowed to see. Behind closed doors, courtiers, allegedly viewed the event as a quiet demonstration that Camilla still commanded respect among the monarchy's most influential circles despite growing attention surrounding Prince William and Princess Catherine. But sometime during the final 48 hours before the gathering, something shifted. At first, the changes seemed manageable. A delayed confirmation here, a polite withdrawal there. Yet by the morning of the reception, reports suggest panic had already begun spreading through. Clarence House administrative offices, as updated attendance lists, started arriving with names unexpectedly missing. Several high-profile guests who had reportedly been expected to anchor the event were suddenly unavailable, while others quietly redirected their appearances toward upcoming initiatives associated with Catherine instead. That detail, insiders claim, changed everything, because inside palace walls, social alignment is rarely accidental. Every appearance is interpreted, every absence, is studied. And when influential figures begin drifting toward one royal household while distancing themselves from another, courtiers immediately recognize the danger hiding beneath the surface. Staff members allegedly described the atmosphere inside Clarence House that morning as tense, unsettled, and unusually emotional. Some aides reportedly feared that photographs of half-empty reception rooms could trigger weeks of damaging speculation about Camilla's standing within royal circles. Others, worried the press would interpret the missing guests as evidence of growing fractures inside the institution itself. Emergency meetings were allegedly held between Camilla's private office and royal communications officials as they debated whether proceeding with the event would create even greater humiliation. Reports suggest the Queen Consort was informed about several unexpected withdrawals, almost simultaneously, turning what had been intended as a polished royal engagement into what insiders privately described as a social disaster unfolding in real time. And perhaps most unsettling of all was the realization quietly spreading through palace corridors that this was not simply about attendance numbers anymore. It was about influence, about shifting loyalties, about the frightening possibility that the monarchy's internal center of gravity was beginning to move somewhere else entirely. But the real shock was not the cancellation itself, it was the growing realization that the balance of power inside the royal household may have quietly changed long before anyone noticed. At first glance, the reception looked harmless. Tea, conversation, and carefully curated royal elegance. But insiders now whisper that the guest list became a battlefield long before the silver trays were prepared. What appeared publicly as another refined engagement tied to literature, charity, and aristocratic tradition was, according to growing palace speculation, something far more strategic beneath the surface. Reports suggest Queen Camilla had hoped the gathering would quietly reinforce her standing among influential cultural figures and long-established royal supporters at a moment when the monarchy itself was entering a period of emotional uncertainty. Clarence House aides allegedly spent weeks shaping the invitations with extraordinary precision, carefully balancing old aristocratic families, trusted social allies, prominent patrons, and figures believed to remain firmly loyal to Camilla's circle. Yet almost immediately, observers inside royal households noticed certain absences from the original guest plans that raised uncomfortable questions. Several younger royals and emerging palace figures reportedly connected to William and Catherine's growing orbit were either excluded entirely or quietly deprioritized, a move that some insiders interpreted as deliberate rather than accidental. And that, palace veterans claim, may have been the moment tension truly began spreading behind closed doors. Because within the monarchy, invitations are never simply invitations. They are signals, messages, tests of allegiance wrapped inside etiquette and tradition. According to sources familiar with aristocratic circles, some invitees allegedly began questioning whether attending the reception might place them too visibly within a faction of the royal household that no longer represented the institution's future direction. That fear reportedly intensified as Catherine's public popularity continued rising at remarkable speed following months of renewed public sympathy and increasing visibility alongside Prince William. Palace commentators had already begun describing William and Catherine as the emotional and symbolic future center of the monarchy, particularly among younger aides, charitable organizations, and elite social networks eager to align themselves with the next generation of royal leadership. Suddenly, attendance at Camilla's event no longer felt socially neutral. Reports suggest delayed RSVPs started arriving days before the reception, creating growing anxiety within Clarence House administrative teams. Some confirmations allegedly shifted from attending to pending without explanation, while other invitees reportedly became difficult to reach altogether. Insiders whisper that the uncertainty unsettled palace staff more than outright refusals would have, because silence inside royal circles often signals calculation rather than indecision. As tension grew, rumors allegedly spread that several notable figures had chosen instead to support initiatives associated with Catherine, including upcoming charitable engagements that were increasingly attracting both media attention and aristocratic enthusiasm. To some courtiers, the pattern felt impossible to ignore. This was no longer about one-tea receptions struggling with attendance. It was becoming a reflection of where influence inside the monarchy was quietly migrating. Some insiders even believe key social figures deliberately chose distance from the event not out of hostility toward Camilla personally, but out of fear that public association with palace factionalism could damage their long-term standing once the next royal era fully arrived. That realization reportedly sent waves of unease through Clarence House because it hinted at something much deeper than temporary embarrassment. It hinted at isolation, a gradual but unmistakable erosion of influence happening in slow motion behind polished palace walls. And as more whispers surfaced about notable guests appearing elsewhere alongside Catherine instead, the atmosphere surrounding the reception reportedly became impossible to contain, turning what should have been an elegant royal gathering into a symbol of something darker unfolding beneath the surface of the crown itself. But behind the polite excuses and delayed confirmations, palace veterans feared something far more dangerous was unfolding: a silent social rebellion inside royal circles. By sunrise, the atmosphere inside Clarence House had reportedly turned icy. Aides moved quickly through corridors, phones rang unanswered, and somewhere between protocol and panic, the entire event began collapsing in real time. What had started as quiet concern over delayed RSVPs suddenly transformed into something far more volatile as the morning unfolded behind closed palace doors. According to insiders, staff members arrived expecting a tense day, but few were prepared for the level of confusion that allegedly consumed the household within hours. Conflicting instructions reportedly circulated between senior aides and administrative teams almost immediately. Seating plans were revised, then revised again. Certain names were quietly shifted away from prominent tables, while others disappeared altogether without explanation. Sources claim the uncertainty created an atmosphere so strained that even experienced palace staff struggled to hide their anxiety. Because by that point, this was no longer simply about organizing a royal reception. It was about containing what many feared was becoming a visible public unraveling of influence inside one of the monarchy's most sensitive households. Reports suggest senior aides became deeply concerned that obvious gaps inside the reception rooms would trigger immediate media speculation, particularly at a time when every royal appearance was already being analyzed through the lens of succession, loyalty, and shifting power. Security teams and catering staff allegedly remained on standby while emergency discussions escalated behind closed doors, uncertain whether the event would proceed or collapse entirely. One insider reportedly described the mood as controlled chaos wrapped in royal politeness, with staff attempting to maintain composure even as panic quietly spread beneath the surface. Then came the moment that insiders claim changed the entire atmosphere inside Clarence House. Overnight, additional guest confirmations had allegedly been withdrawn without warning. Some cancellations reportedly arrived through intermediaries rather than directly, which only intensified palace suspicions that certain figures were deliberately distancing themselves while trying to avoid public fallout. According to rumors circulating among royal communications staff, Camilla herself was informed of the developments in rapid succession during a private morning briefing, and insiders claim the reaction behind closed doors was one of visible frustration mixed with disbelief. For years, the Queen Consort had carefully cultivated relationships across aristocratic, literary, and cultural circles. Yet suddenly, people who once appeared firmly within her orbit now seemed hesitant to stand too close publicly. That realization reportedly hit Clarence House harder than the cancellations themselves, because inside royal life, hesitation can be more dangerous than opposition. Some insiders allege royal communications officials urgently debated whether proceeding with the reception would create even greater humiliation than canceling it outright. If photographers captured thin attendance or visibly empty seating arrangements, palace veterans feared the images could instantly become symbolic shorthand for something much larger: a perceived weakening of Camilla's social authority within elite royal circles. Administrative aides reportedly worried that even a single widely circulated photograph could fuel weeks of speculation about isolation, division, and quiet rejection inside the monarchy itself. At the same time, whispers surrounding William and Catherine reportedly intensified across palace households. Rumors spread that recent shifts in influence around the Prince and Princess of Wales had already begun reshaping social calculations among aristocrats, donors, and royal affiliates long before this reception crisis emerged publicly. The growing perception that William and Catherine represented the monarchy's future center of gravity allegedly created invisible pressure throughout royal circles, forcing people to choose proximity carefully. And perhaps most unsettling of all was the growing belief among palace veterans that this disaster had not appeared overnight. The cancellations, the distancing, the tension between households. Many insiders now believed these fractures had been building silently for months beneath the polished surface of royal unity. And, yet, even as the reception unraveled behind palace walls, another development was sending shockwaves through the institution, because many believed this moment had been building for months. While Clarence House struggled to contain embarrassment, Kensington Palace appeared calm, disciplined, and strangely untouched by the chaos unfolding across royal households. And insiders say that contrast revealed everything. As confusion reportedly spread through Camilla's circle, another narrative was quietly strengthening across the monarchy at the exact same time. A narrative centered around stability, restraint, and the growing emotional power of Prince William and Princess Catherine. According to palace observers, the difference between the two households had become impossible to ignore in recent months. One appeared increasingly defensive, anxious to preserve influence inside shifting royal structures. The other projected patience, unity, and long-term confidence without needing to demand attention at all. That contrast, insiders whisper, was now reshaping how aristocrats, donors, palace staff, and even longtime royal allies viewed the future of the crown itself. Reports suggest Catherine's public image had strengthened dramatically following recent appearances connected to her recovery and gradual return to royal duties. What began as sympathy had allegedly evolved into something far more powerful: trust. Across charitable organizations and cultural institutions, commentators reportedly noticed a growing eagerness to associate with Kensington Palace initiatives, particularly those connected to Catherine's carefully managed public role beside William. Some insiders even claim aristocratic circles had begun viewing Catherine as carrying the same emotional continuity once associated with Queen Elizabeth II, especially in the way she balanced dignity, restraint, and quiet resilience under enormous scrutiny. That perception, palace veterans warn, carries enormous weight. Inside royal culture, because emotional symbolism often matters just as much as formal titles. Sources familiar with internal palace dynamics suggest younger aides increasingly aligned themselves with William's long-term vision for the monarchy, believing he represented a more stable and disciplined future during a period of uncertainty surrounding King Charles's reign. And while those shifts were rarely acknowledged publicly, insiders claim they could be felt everywhere behind the scenes from donor conversations to charity partnerships, to the subtle social calculations made inside elite royal circles. Against that backdrop, Camilla's tea reception allegedly took on a much larger significance than anyone initially realized. According to commentators, the event was intended partly as a symbolic reassertion of relevance, a reminder that Clarence House still commanded loyalty, prestige, and influence despite growing fascination with the Wales household. But instead of reinforcing authority, the cancellation reportedly deepened fears that something fundamental inside palace power structures was quietly changing. The empty confirmations, the hesitant guests, the sudden withdrawals, all of it began feeding a narrative that loyalties were drifting elsewhere. And perhaps most painful of all for Clarence House was the fact that Kensington Palace never needed to respond publicly for the comparison to become devastating. Silence alone seemed to strengthen the perception that William and Catherine were rising while others struggled to hold their ground. Media insiders allegedly described the failed reception as a social warning sign within the monarchy, not because one event had collapsed, but because of what the collapse appeared to symbolize beneath the surface. Royal households survive on perception, and perception had started turning in dangerous ways. Some palace veterans reportedly feared that aristocratic and institutional support was beginning to consolidate quietly around the future reign rather than the current structure surrounding the king and queen consort. That possibility created an atmosphere of emotional unease far beyond Clarence House, because once influence begins moving inside royal systems, it rarely reverses quickly. And as whispers continued spreading through palace corridors and private clubs across London, one chilling realization reportedly settled over royal insiders alike. The cancellation was no longer being viewed as an isolated embarrassment. It was being interpreted as evidence of a deeper transition already underway inside the House of Windsor itself. But the deepest humiliation was still to come, because whispers soon emerged that one absence from the guest list mattered more than all the others combined. Among all the missing confirmations, one name reportedly froze conversations inside Clarence House the moment it was mentioned. Because this was not just another declined invitation, it was someone whose loyalty had once been considered unquestionable. According to whispers now circulating through royal circles, the absence involved a prominent aristocratic figure long believed to stand firmly within Camilla's trusted social orbit, someone whose appearances at royal gatherings had for years carried quiet symbolic weight inside the monarchy's inner ecosystem. Reports suggest the withdrawal arrived at the worst possible moment, after preparations had already entered their final stage. After senior aides had reassured Clarence House that the reception would still retain enough influential support to avoid public embarrassment. But insiders claim everything changed once that particular name disappeared from the confirmation list. Suddenly, what had looked like manageable cancellations began feeling like something much more dangerous. Because within palace culture, certain absences are never interpreted at face value. They become signals, warnings, messages delivered without ever needing to be spoken aloud. Sources familiar with aristocratic networks allegedly described the decision as carrying enormous symbolic importance, far beyond an ordinary scheduling conflict or polite social decline. Some insiders reportedly interpreted it as evidence that alliances within upper royal families were forming. Circles were quietly shifting in preparation for the monarchy's future, rather than its present, and that possibility struck directly at one of the deepest fears surrounding Clarence House, that elite supporters who once rallied instinctively around Camilla were beginning to calculate where long-term stability truly lived inside the institution. Reports claim the withdrawal immediately triggered emergency discussions among royal communications officials regarding optics, press management, and exposure risk. According to palace rumors, aides feared that if journalists connected the absence to wider tensions already rumored between royal households, the story could spiral beyond containment within hours. Because by then, speculation surrounding William and Catherine's rising influence had already become impossible to separate from the reception's collapse. Every missing guest was now viewed through the lens of succession, hierarchy, and the growing belief that the monarchy was emotionally transitioning toward its next era faster than anyone publicly admitted. Royal commentators allegedly began linking the situation to broader uncertainty surrounding King Charles's reign itself, particularly as ongoing concerns about health and long-term stability continued shaping conversations behind closed doors. Some palace insiders whispered that influential aristocrats and institutional figures were no longer making decisions based solely on personal loyalty, but on what they believed would best position them within the monarchy's future structure. That shift reportedly created deep anxiety inside Clarence House because it suggested something profoundly unsettling. Support was no longer guaranteed simply because of title or rank. It now depended on perceived permanence, on momentum, on where the crown seemed destined to move next. Clarence House staff allegedly feared the media would quickly frame the cancellations as evidence that Camilla was becoming increasingly isolated within elite royal circles, a narrative palace aides reportedly considered politically devastating even if publicly denied. Comparisons quietly emerged between Camilla's current position and earlier periods in royal history when figures connected to the monarchy suddenly found themselves socially marginalized once public and aristocratic sentiment began shifting elsewhere. Those whispers only intensified the emotional weight already surrounding the failed reception. What had originally been intended as a charitable and cultural engagement was now completely overshadowed by speculation surrounding loyalty, influence, and silent palace rivalries. Even the event's original purpose, reportedly vanished beneath the avalanche of rumors consuming royal conversations across London drawing rooms and media corridors alike. And perhaps most troubling of all was the growing realization among courtiers that the story was no longer staying confined behind palace gates. The whispers had escaped. The interpretations were spreading. And every new rumor deepened the sense that something irreversible might already be unfolding inside the House of Windsor. And as headlines began circling, outside palace walls, courtiers understood something unsettling. The monarchy's internal Cold War was no longer staying private. In royal life, receptions are rarely just receptions. They are tests of loyalty, measurements of influence, and silent displays of who still commands a room before even entering it. And this time, the silence surrounding the cancelled tea gathering may have spoken louder than the event itself ever could. What began as a carefully planned social engagement inside Clarence House slowly transformed into something far more revealing, a public glimpse into the uncertainty, fragility, and shifting loyalties now quietly reshaping the House of Windsor behind closed doors. According to palace insiders, the cancellation was viewed internally not as a temporary embarrassment, but as a symbolic setback for Camilla's household at one of the most delicate moments of King Charles's reign. Because within royal life, perception is power, and when influential guests hesitate, when confirmations disappear, and when elite social circles begin repositioning themselves without explanation, the monarchy notices. Every courtier notices. Reports suggest senior palace figures have become increasingly focused on preserving long-term institutional stability, as pressures surrounding the crown continue mounting from multiple directions at once. Health concerns surrounding the king, succession anxieties, and growing public fascination with the future generation have allegedly intensified private discussions about where the monarchy is heading emotionally as well as politically. In that environment, William and Catherine's influence reportedly continues expanding behind the scenes in ways the public rarely sees directly but palace veterans feel constantly. Their growing role inside charitable networks, aristocratic circles, and public sentiment has allegedly begun reshaping royal dynamics with quiet but undeniable force. Some commentators now believe the cancelled reception exposed how deeply those changes have already penetrated elite royal culture. Because social positioning inside aristocratic circles often signals larger political movement long before official structures acknowledge it publicly. The people invited to stand beside a royal figure and the people who choose not to can reveal more than speeches, ceremonies, or palace statements ever will. Clarence House aides reportedly worked desperately to minimize the fallout once the reception collapsed, publicly framing the cancellation as procedural, while privately attempting to contain growing concern inside the household. Yet the more palace insiders tried to quiet speculation, the louder the rumors seemed to become. Royal observers claim the episode exposed fragile alliances that had previously remained hidden beneath ceremonial unity and polished public appearances. For years, the monarchy survived by projecting continuity and discipline even during periods of personal conflict. But this time felt different, because according to some insiders, The tension surrounding the failed gathering reflected not just rivalry between households, but a deeper uncertainty about where loyalty inside the institution now truly belongs. Some palace veterans reportedly fear further divisions could emerge as King Charles faces mounting personal and institutional pressures in the years ahead. Others believe the monarchy is already transitioning emotionally toward its next era. Whether officials are prepared to acknowledge it openly or not, that possibility has created an atmosphere of unease stretching far beyond Clarence House itself. The cancelled reception became more than a missed social engagement. It became a symbol of shifting influence, of fragile loyalties, of a monarchy quietly wrestling with questions about power, relevance, and legacy, while trying desperately to maintain the illusion of unity before the world. And perhaps most haunting of all is the realization that moments like these rarely announce themselves as turning points while they are happening. They emerge later, remembered as the first visible crack before everything beneath the surface finally changed. Because behind the polished smiles, velvet curtains, and carefully staged appearances, the crown may already be preparing for a future that looks very different from the one Queen Camilla once imagined. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.